Можете починати.
Доброго дня, шановні учасники прес-конференції. Доброго дня.
Welcome everybody, all the participants of this press conference and the Ukrainian public. Today, we are happy to announce that we have finished a project together with the European Union on the prevention of drugs. Today, we are happy to present to you a new handbook to be published in the Ukrainian tongue on the curriculum of prevention of drug abuse. I will not be long in taking too much of your time, but I would like to thank the European Union to be honored through the initiative of the Geopolitical Alliance of Women. And we've been happy to participate in this project, which was the result of the work of my department headed by the idea to make sure that the Ukrainian public is healthy now, especially now in the time of war. And after we have secured our victory, this will be more poignant. And I believe that majority of the Ukrainians will be engaged in this program of Healthy Ukraine. It is my pleasure to present to you our main experts, including the speakers, and we have set up a Ukrainian consortium that will see the participation of different agencies on drug prevention. Hopefully, we will set up a dialogue today. And I hope that after this press conference, you will be more aware of the specifics of this topic. We are asking you to get engaged. Everybody who wants to get the copy of the handbook, you can turn to us. We will share it with you in an electronic form. Hopefully that this will be your household manual for the nearest future. Once again, thank you, colleagues. Thank you to the EMCDDA and the experts of the project. Now I would like to give the floor to the leading expert of our project, a person who has been taking care of this prevention program. In short, I'm giving the floor to Gregor Buchhardt, the principal scientific analyst, the prevention support to practice sector of public health unit. Gregor, welcome. And I would like you to share your take on how the European Union works in the framework of this program. What is the result of the implementation project, and how do you think it will be functioning in Ukraine? Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm really happy to be here. Happy to see the launch of this manual, which was a long process. And I know it was painful for some of you doing some of the work in bomb shelters. It's also a long project. You know, the initial initiative came from an international manual, and we adapted this and shortened this to the European context. And this was necessary because the EU is one of those regions who have put into their overall strategy the necessity to train policymakers at local level to improve their knowledge of what works in prevention. You know, the dilemma of prevention is that we have evidence-based interventions that work, that are effective, but the people in the municipalities, in the districts, they do not know that. So they will continue to fund obsolete, old, ineffective interventions that might be harmful. And I think the success of this EUPC initiative is that it trains people who take decisions, but who normally never heard about prevention. And these people, the decision makers, belong to the workforce. Also, police people belong to the workforce in prevention. They just need to know what can be done that does not harm the children. So having a manual in Ukraine shows how much Ukraine belongs to Europe, because is the European way of approaching prevention, with more respect for human rights, with more mention and giving also importance to harm reduction as a sister intervention for other kind of target groups. So this manual fits into the pillars of a truly European substance use prevention strategy and gives decision makers, as I said, access to what works and what does not. So people can get a 2 days training. Often policymakers have no time to be there more for 2 days, but that's sufficient. Only people who want to know more can get the advanced modules where they can get deeper insights on what works or not in the area of prevention in nightlife, about how to find out which evaluation studies are bad or are fake, how to choose useful mass media campaigns and not finance those that might be harmful. So these are things that people learn there and which are relevant. Otherwise, we will not move ahead with prevention. And given that Ukraine is a huge country, we are also setting up an e-learning part where the advanced training contents can be done by e-learning, only on your computer at night, whenever you want, in your own rhythm. That's the other part. So you don't need to meet necessarily. We have around half of European Union countries have already national trainers for EUPC. The beautiful thing is for Ukraine, which is not yet in the European Union, we have already one established national trainer, one trainer who is soon to be established national trainer, Olena, who sits here with us, and maybe a third national trainer for the future, Svetlana. So Ukraine is in what regards the EUPC, better position than some old standing members of the European Union. And that's really beautiful. And I hope we can continue in working together and in establishing a workforce of decision makers in Ukraine that know what prevention is, what prevention truly is, and what effective tools are there to spend the scarce money for prevention more wisely without harming our children. Because prevention can be harmful in the way it is being done in many regions till now. That's sufficient. Thank you.
Дякую, пану Грегору. Ну, і я дійсно хочу нагадати всім, хто нас...
Thank you, Gregor. Yet again, I want to emphasize the point that we are not aware of the Ukrainian institutions that are working here. They don't seem to be apparent in today's scale of priorities in Ukraine, but it makes sense to know this, that in Ukraine, we see the tools, for example, the state strategy to prevent drug use until 2030, combating drug crime, and this is part and parcel of the program by the Ministry of Public Health. At the Ministry of Public Health, we have a beautiful institution that takes care of that, represented by today's participant, Alexander Bukriev, who is the head of the International Cooperation Unit Institute of Psychiatry, Forensic Psychiatric Examination and Drug Monitoring. Mr. Bukriev, we welcome you, and I would like to give you the floor, acknowledging your contribution. Thank you very much for the invitation. With your permission, I will switch into English. Now I'm switching over to the English language now.
So, dear audience, my name is Alex, just Alex, and I'm here in the role of the Chief of the International Cooperation Unit to represent the Institute of Psychiatry, Forensic Psychiatric Examination and Drug Monitoring of the Ministry of Health of Ukraine. Greeting to all of you and my congratulations on completing the important work on the translation and adaptation of the handbook of the EU psychoactive substance use prevention curriculum. The same work will be best covered for sure by the experts directly involved in that working process. I would like to briefly focus on our cooperation with the European Center for Drugs and Drug Addiction that has been developing for over 10 years. If you take as a starting point the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Ministry of Health of Ukraine and the same European Center for Drugs and Drug Addiction, EMC-CDDA, on 28th of January 2010. At the legislative level, the government resolution of the 10th of July 2019, number 689, assigned our institute, which is the legal successor of the Center for Mental Health and Monitoring Drugs and Alcohol, as a focal point from Ukraine for drug monitoring cooperation, including the cooperation with the European Center for Drugs and Drug Addiction. Our joint work with the EMC-DDA covers various areas of activities. Namely, personally me and other institute's employees take part in expert meetings on certain projects and drug monitoring indicators, such as treatment demand, prevalence of drug use, drug-related deaths, drug legislation, and many others. I would like to mention some recent projects implemented in cooperation with the EMC-DDA. The first one I would like to mention is the overview of the Ukrainian drug market based on the research of the Trimbos Institute, Dutch Trimbos Institute, under the aegis of EMC-DDA. The second one is the online tool called Penalties at a Glance, which serves for comparing systems of penalty for drug use, consumption, storage, and sale of a wide range of countries. So the data of Ukraine was added to this online tool at the beginning of this year. The third project was held in May, was implemented in April and May, and this is the survey on the impact of the war waged by Russia on Ukrainian young people in terms of their mental health, drug and alcohol use. And the fourth one is the description or short overview of the situation in Ukraine relative to the cannabis cultivation and cannabis-related laws. In the light of EU candidate status, which was granted to Ukraine on 23rd of June, if I'm not mistaken, we are looking forward to extending our cooperation and programs with the European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Drug Addiction. Well, to finalize my speech, I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak out and for your attention. And I would like to give the floor to the next speakers. And the first of all, to my colleague Alexei Sukhovy, who is the head of the Center for the Organization of Psychiatric Care of our institute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear colleagues. My name is Alexei Sukhovy. I'm the head of the Center for Organization of Psychiatric Care in this institute that is Alex representing. I will shift to Ukrainian and will shortly also add some information about activities in this field, and my our thanks to EMCDDA and MH and U4MD program. Шановні колеги, дуже дякую.
Dear colleagues, once again, thank you. This is a symbolic event for Ukraine. The prevention program is very urgent. Currently, Ukraine is implementing a number of actions in terms of psychiatric health. For example, a couple of weeks ago, we launched a program on psychological aid and psychiatric health guided by the First Lady, Ms. Zelensky, and also with the participation of the Ministry of Public Health. We are talking here about a legislation of Ukraine and changing the Ukrainian legislation that will be guiding the activities of the Ministry for Public Health. So the prevention issue in terms of prevention of drug use is very important. All the illnesses that we relate to the drugs issues are being integrated into psychiatric aid, including the actions to provide psychiatric aid to different departments and ministries. The Institute for Psychiatry and Monitoring of Drugs has recently been gathering and consolidating data in the framework of the program until 2030. According to the information we have gathered, we have hundreds of activities in the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Public Health, and other ministries. However, this teaching tool is not an adaptation, but rather a translation of the international expertise, which is highly relevant to Ukraine. You know, when different documents get into Ukraine, we see that there is not enough scientific substantiation. Now that we have an evidence-based handbook, this is very important in terms of the standardization of medical services. Sometimes we translate from English into Ukrainian just the list, but the tools that have been translated rather than adapted are deemed to be very highly competitive and useful, although they need to be adapted to a specific country. As for the drug-related illnesses, comes onto a more broader context. Recently, we have seen different kinds of dependencies like gaming and other activities where people are in need of being protected in terms of gambling and other disorders. I think in a couple of years' time, Ukraine will see other legislations. I mean, we are thinking about that now because it goes beyond the issue of drug use, but gambling and gaming is currently very high on the agenda. So the prevention of different dependencies comes beyond the issue of psychoactive drugs. We also are trying to integrate all these services of different kind of abuse and dependencies as part of the primary medical aid. We train here nurses, social workers. The World Health Organization is implementing in Ukraine different trainings on combating the gap that we see here in Ukraine. MH Gap, a program that has seen many family doctors and nurses participating in them, including pharmaceutical specialists, social care workers, and non-core specialists working in the educational establishments. That is to say, a lot of actions is going on, and we can familiarize yourselves with the programs in our annual report. Once again, I would like to thank the organizers. I think a key thank you goes to the coalition of women who have translated the thing, because dependency and other abuse is not only concerned the male population, but the female population as well. That thing seems to be stigmatized and underrated. We believe that the issues that have been touched in this curriculum are very urgent, and Ukraine will take advantage of this program, especially in these times of war. Thank you very much. Indeed, the prevention issue is the core of our work. It's not a matter of abuse or fighting drugs, but rather the prevention of different dependencies. This is why I would like to give the floor to the representative of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Thank you for being invited. My thanks go on behalf of the Ministry of the Interior and the National Police. We have been working on the project of adapting this handbook. We believe that the prevention and other people who are subject to dependencies, as it has already been mentioned, is very urgent. Today's monitoring that we conduct and assessing the efficiency of this work, we want to raise our awareness and raise our efficiencies. I would like to take the opportunity of this opportunity to stress that the law enforcement aspect is very important. I would like to draw your attention to this fact. We are all witnessing different facts when children lose their parents, parents lose their children, and sometimes we are deprived of the psychological aid from our loved ones. Of course, these experiences are different. We are talking about instances when people lose their limbs, and that puts an end to their professional dreams and future. People are deprived of their homes, of their assets. They have to move from one place to another in seek of new jobs, of new homes. They are constantly under stress. And it's not a matter of civilians only. Our law enforcement, the military, the rescuers, the volunteers, journalists, psychology experts are people who live through these experiences, and they are the category of people who are in need of help. And sometimes such an aid is connected to the issue of different psychological dependence, not only drug dependence, but other kinds of dependencies. We are all aware of the economic circumstances that we will see in the future. We are now seeing that people are losing their jobs. They don't receive their paychecks. And it raises the awareness and the need for work with the children now that the majority of Ukrainian pupils have been taking their classes online, and it is very unlikely that they will go offline because we want to secure their security, because schools don't have bomb shelters. So we will have to recalibrate our activities in this sphere. All the economic and social challenges that we are facing today are likely and have already put their trace. As a result, the number of people who are in the risk zone have increased. These are the people who can now develop different dependencies, and the prevention here is as important as ever. As for the law enforcement, despite the fact that the drug trafficking from and into Ukraine through different routes by air or by land is not currently taking place, there are some issues on the land border of Ukraine, but internally we are seeing when drugs are being landed, the criminal activities has not evaporated, it's taking place, of course, and we are also looking into the issue that has been raised today, the issue of cannabis and its growth for medical purposes. The law enforcement that should take care of this must be engaged in controlling the whole process. Currently, the Ukrainian law enforcement is engaged in the security sector in the first place. So it's not always that we are able to monitor the situation with a drug sell or drug abuse. You know, the Ukrainian law enforcement are engaged in the war activities 24/7. And different categories of risks that I have raised should also be thought of at the backdrop of the fact that law enforcement have to work in parallel with the law enforcement and the military actions. So the prevention must be done on the evidence-based footing. We must be aware of the fact that this toolkit will work now that we are seeing the situation that will be a breeding ground for these new types of dependencies. It'll take a long time for this country to renovate itself, and we value everybody's life. We understand that those categories that, and we are talking about millions of persons here, that must be taken care of by the state in order for them to be supported. And once they have heard something in time, and on point, this will give strength to people to fight their psychology and deal with the psychological problems that they have developed. Now that Ukraine has chosen a European path where the human rights is key and parcel of the values and the main goal of this country, it is extremely important to have implemented the European standards, that we follow them. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the stakeholders of this beautiful initiative. God bless this project, and I wish that the expertise that Ukraine will gain in the area of prevention of crime in the post-war, after the martial law has been lifted, we will be able to share with the Ukrainian public and with our foreign partners as well. Thank you. I'm sure once we have women engaged in this movement, we are destined to be successful. We will be successful. I would like to give the floor to a person who has initiated and has united us, extremely high qualified people from the EMCDDA, and the interpreter doesn't have that name. She represents the European Union for Monitoring Drugs. Anna, thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Svetlana, for the introduction. And once again, good afternoon to all of you in Kiev and beyond. It's a real pleasure to be attending this launch event today. First of all, I would like to extend our congratulations to the government of Ukraine for having been granted European Union candidate country status by the European Council on 23rd of June, very recently. The EMCDDA has a long-standing cooperation with the government of Ukraine and the Institute of Psychiatry, Forensic Psychiatric Examination and Drug Monitoring in particular. This significant development of candidate country status will bring the cooperation between the government of Ukraine and the EMCDDA even closer and to a different level altogether. Today's launch of the European Prevention Curriculum Handbook, which has been translated and adapted for use in Ukraine, is an example of our close cooperation with the Institute and the country. The translation and adaptation were supported by our monitoring centers, our European Monitoring Center on Drugs, EU for Monitoring Drugs project, which is funded by the European Union. We started this work 1 year ago. Ukraine is in fact the first country of all the 14 project partner countries to launch an adapted version of this European handbook. We are very proud of our team of contractors led by Svetlana and Olena, who were able to complete the work on time despite the most challenging circumstances following the invasion of the country 4 months ago. So we are very proud of the team, and my warm congratulations go to our team led by Svetlana. Another example of our collaboration with the Institute is a mapping of prevention systems, which was conducted 1 year ago. The prevention system mapping looked into national prevention systems in 13 project partner countries, including Ukraine. A brief report on the prevention mapping systems will be launched next week. One of the findings of the prevention mapping survey was that, like in many other countries, the dominant prevention approach in Ukraine is mostly based on what we call informational approach. Informational prevention approach typically involves raising a general awareness and public education about the risks of drug use. However, available scientific evidence informs us that an informational approach alone is not very effective in preventing drug use, but especially among young people, I would like to add. So we hope that now that the European Prevention Curriculum Handbook is available in Ukrainian, it will contribute towards transitioning prevention of drug use from an informational approach alone to a more science-based approach, which also will include developmental and environmental approaches, which are described and explained in this handbook. In the long term, we hope that the adapted handbook will become part of a national training program of Ukrainian prevention workforce and will contribute to the further expansion of evidence-informed drug prevention in Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Дякую, Анна, дуже. І я хочу з задоволенням передати слово Олені.
Thank you, Anna. I would like to give the floor to Olena Puch, the head of the project. She is the member of our Geopolitical Alliance of Women. It is honor, Olena, to have been working with you. What you have done comes down to impossible to work in these circumstances that we are living in. Will you tell us where you have taken strength and inspiration for everything to be done in time and in high quality level. The motivation that I have enjoyed is when I went through the first tour of my education. Welcome, everybody. Congratulations. I would like to tell you a few words about the handbook and about the work that our friendly team has put into it. In the first place, my thanks go to EMCDDA, to Anna, to Gregor, and also our Polish expert who has been helping us in terms of methodology, which is very important. So what is the raison d'etre of this handbook? This handbook is part of the curriculum. Theoretical issue, of course, is good, but it matters how you put into practice the theoretical knowledge. During the network, you are provided with the toolbox and the instruments to assess how effective the strategy would be. The main question is this: no one argues that prevention is necessary, but unfortunately, the money is spent on not always efficient approaches that are not necessarily evidence-based. How did we adapt? We were asked by the EMCDA to put together a working group representing different ministries: Ministry of Public Health, Ministry of the Interior, of Education, the forensic and psychiatric science, different universities, including Taras Shevchenko University, NGOs, not necessarily women's NGOs, who participated in the process of adaptation. And there are other institutions that the interpreter is not able to enlist all of them. Related to the subjects that are treated in the handbook, we have invited not only members of the consortium, but also members of the business community, parent community, others strata of life, to know how best to adapt. From the beginning, I would like to emphasize that we have decided not to change the contents because these are evidence-based and time-tested. It's an expertise gain in Europe, throughout the world, that have been made available to the Ukrainian public. Now, the chapters include epidemiology, the monitoring of assessment, examples of intervention, of preventing in schools, in job, in recreational institutions, in public, different communities, and there are different other chapters. And another thought I would share with you is this: at the end of the book, you will see different translations into different languages. You can turn to the original language, to the handbooks, into other European languages if you care, to read them and see how they have adapted. The Ukrainian specific is an additional appendix about epidemiology, about the current situation in today's Ukraine. The information, of course, will be used by all the experts in prevention or policymakers or influencers, the stakeholders of any kind. Once again, I would like to thank Ms. Victoria, Mr. Sukhavi, Rumyantseva, and Lidenka, Marina Yeroshina, and others. Indeed, in the book, we have mentioned all of you, but gives me a special pleasure to mention your names again. It is sad that we have come to the end of this project, but Gregor is used to show a movie Casablanca where the characters say that this is not the end of the story, this is the beginning of a new one. So I wish you all possible successes. In my heart, I cherish the hope for the Ukraine of the future, a victorious and a healthy one. Glory to Ukraine. Let me also add here that a major chunk of the book is integrated into the Ukrainian educational system. The most powerful focal group was that of teachers when we touched upon the issues of relations between children, between parents and school. Everybody wanted to take the floor here. And I would like now to give the floor to Ms. Krukevich, who is acting head of the expert group on innovation development of the Directorate of Science and Innovation of the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine. This is a highly competitive talk. We have been joined here by the students from universities, including from Ukrainian cities outside of the capital city. This is something that we all care about. Thank you for the invitation.
Initiative and for your supporting Ukraine teams in adaptation and coordination this process to prepare this handbook. It's very important for Ukraine. Thank you. І, шановні колеги, дуже рада, що сьогодні ми зібрались з нагоди.
Dear friends, it gives me special pleasure to see you all on the day of the presentation of what has taken us a long time to put together. This road has shown how different institutions can get together. The public watchdogs, the scientific community, law enforcement, local government, ministries. So the pool of experts is quite massive, and the result is also a massive one. It's been a pleasure to work in such a company, to provide my expertise and assessments, to take on board my friends from the Ministry of Education. They give their greetings to you. In spite of the fact that we are living through the unimaginably complicated times, the work has been done. We are living on the 128th day of cruel war, but the topic that has been raised in this book is as urgent as ever. This is what matters for our children, for our nation, for all people of different ages. And of course it matters for the European context. Of course Ukraine has been granted a candidate status, but I am sure that we will not stop here. As it has been mentioned today, we are sad that this stage has ended, but it also brings new fruit. We will be more active in adapting and implementation of the guidelines and coming up with a new legislation in the system of prevention of misuse and abuse of psychoactive drugs. Congratulations on this beautiful result. Thank you for cooperation, and we'll keep on working. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you for those kind words. Indeed, the system of education in Ukraine has adopted and taken on board this project. We have a video from the scientific community. We have a professor of the academy, and she's put on the video her statement. Welcome, dear participants of the project directed at preparing a handbook on prevention of the misuse of psychoactive drugs and substances. Very important and urgent issue. Indeed, there is a necessity to come up with the evidence-based program to fight the abuse by different categories of persons, especially that are underage. Our different departments at the academy, and I personally, Mishinka Victoria, and I am the doctor of pedagogical sciences, and I am the professor of the department. We have participated in the work on this handbook. It has been a fruitful work, that has been crowned with a success. As of today, we can hold in our hands the handbook that can be taken advantage of by different stakeholders and public organizations. I am grateful for your support, for the opportunity to participate in the work of the AMCDDA, Ms. Solomachina and Ms. Pogach, and the Geopolitical Alliance of Women. To you all, my thanks. I wish you fruitful work, further success, and a victory to our military overrun our enemy. And until next time, it's goodbye. Thank you. It gives me a pleasure to give the floor to Svetlana Rumenenska, the founder of the charity foundation, The Well-Being of Generation. The problem of prevention is something that her charity takes care of. I thank you, Svetlana, for working out the nationwide strategy and all the work that your foundation is doing. It's an honor to have been working with you and cooperating with you. Welcome, colleagues, and thank you for this opportunity to take the floor in the framework of this event. I would like to thank the EMCDDA. We have been empowered by their expertise, academic developments, and it also gives Ukraine a possibility to adapt the translated standards into the development of this country. Our foundation was set up with a view to organize and bringing together people who are planning to do something in terms of prevention of the abuse of psychic active drugs. We've put together a team of experts, and part of them were engaged in this project. I would like to thank Svetlana Solomatina, Olena, and other moderators and the specialists who have been so active in translating and adapting the handbook into Ukrainian for Ukraine. This is only a guideline for what needs to be changed in Ukraine, and we should do this as soon as possible. We should think who else must be engaged in this project, in these issues. It makes me wonder why the inspection of labor is comfortably numb. We don't have people from the Ministry of Sports and Youth, but we have a strategy for education, strategy for youth and health for until the year 2030. We aim to put on board the best practices of the world. Once again, my thanks go to the participants. Thank you for all the path we have traversed together, and we stand ready to be engaged in your further projects. Let me also point out that there is a bigger chapter in the book on prevention in the communities, in the local communities, in schools. And I would like to turn to all the specialists in Ukraine. We are open to all your questions. We stand ready to share the book with you. We'll be happy to answer all your questions. We are interested in making sure that the current and the next generation of Ukraine are healthy, and we are not confronted with the problems that we are facing today. You see, the most complicated thing was something that our next speaker knows. She, was on the receiving side of things. She deals with something that is radically different in Ukraine as opposed to what was done in the former Soviet Union, not to frighten people, not to show them needles, blood, and bloody pictures. This is what I have learned from her, how to positively, shall I say, expose people. Natalia, I would like to give you the floor because you have suffered most of us, I think. thank you. Due to your effort, we also re-evaluated a lot of things. What we have launched in the metro underground system, on public transportation, something that we crossed out. We understood that we should get rid of those materials because it would only lead to getting people interested in experimenting with drugs. This is what we have learned from you. Of course, we're thinking not only about combating, but also it goes hand in hand with preventing. Now we are aware of that. We know that, yes, there is legislation, but there is also something that we call an inner approach. When you approach people with your soul, with your heart, you approach a kid who understands how these substances can ruin his whole life. And I am appreciative of your project. You're very good boys and girls. Thank you. What we have learned from you is that the core of prevention is our interaction with the help of our heart and soul, and the relations is the basis for preventing issues in any kind of things. But when we come down to drug abuse, this is what matters most. We have learned this, and now it needs to be implemented. I would like to give thanks to our publisher. We've been testing her with a number of questions. Thank you for the design of the book. I don't know whether the head of the publishing house had the ability to join us, but I know that your editors were literally burning the midnight oil in the bomb shelters working on our book. I know that you are outside of Ukraine. Are you able to come online? Yes, I am. Welcome. We are thankful to you. I know that you have published very many handbooks. How did you treat our project? As always, I treat the project as a childbirth, and this kid was very special. Yes, it was a complicated thing. You know, it takes time for labors, for a child to be born. 9 months' time of pregnancy is a long time. It's a different experience. Yes, we are working, some of us were working in the bomb shelters. But what matters here is the result, and the result is here. This is a goal, and a high goal has been achieved. And I believe that everyone who has participated in this project in any way are patriots big time. We have made strides. We have made another step towards our victory, towards a victory of a healthy nation. I love you all. May God help and defend our country. Wishing you all the best. We thank your publishing house and give our heartfelt thanks to your employees. We have also student population who are part of the Erasmus program of the European Union, people from the Podilsk University. And I would like to give the floor to the representative of the student population. Will you tell us whether you're going to take advantage of this handbook? Welcome, everybody. I would like to introduce myself. I am the Doctor of Economics, a professor and a Deputy Rector for Innovation and International Community Innovation Activities of the Podilsk University. With me now are students who seem to be the first and end users. the girls that are now in Spain on Erasmus Plus program. And we thank the hosting country for enjoying good life there. Bogdana Dudziak, Vita, Lisa, and Maria are with us online. We have also students, many of them. And we also postgraduate student, Svetlana Polishchuk, and the head of our international department of our university. Now, a proposal that we have to suggest is that this handbook should be the first one to come to the library of my university. Now, what I have heard today from the speakers, the job that you've done was a massive one. And I know what it feels like to work on such a global project. Indeed, I bow down to you, take off my hat in recognition of what you have achieved. And our appreciation comes from the professors of my university, and I think it will be spread throughout Ukraine for educational purposes. It will be read by pupils as and has suggested this is one of the most serious problems for the young generation when they look for some kind of recreation or respite. So this has been a massive, colossal work. Wish you all possible success. And it feels good to have done the work that the future generations will be thankful for. Thank you, and glory to Ukraine. Let me remind you that the handbook is available on the website of the EMCDDA, which is Lisbon-based in Portugal. It's available to everyone. And we have Ilse Jakobsson. If you are online, I give the floor to you to conclude this seating, because it's an honor to hear from our beloved friends from the EMCDDA. The floor is yours, Ilse.
Yeah. Thank you, Svetlana. Thank you, colleagues. Well, congratulations once again. I will be speaking in English since I don't speak yet Ukrainian. It was a pleasure to work with you on this project. And as mentioned already several times, this project was only beginning, and we definitely know that there will be continuation because we have people who are now actively getting trained how to use the handbook in the practice, how to implement. There are series of trainings, as it was already mentioned by my colleague Gregor, ongoing. And we do hope that also by end of this year we will be able to launch a training in Ukrainian language, not only in English. And with that we will be able to expand the training to everyone in Ukraine who is interested to get trained about the prevention issues. And it is really a pleasure to see such a big group of experts around the table today, or around the screen, as we lately say. But and I think that every one of you will have a very big role to play also in the future. And I will really looking forward to see you in our future activities linked to the further implementation of the prevention manual in Ukraine. And well, thank you to all of you once again, and have a nice afternoon. And thank you, Svetlana. Over to you.
Дякую, Ілза, і дякую всім учасникам сьогоднішньої
Дякую, Ilse. I thank Ilse and thank everybody who has been watching, who will be watching this press conference, I would like to challenge all the Ukrainians to get to know what has been in it in an effort to persevere for the best future of this country. Glory to Ukraine. We are insurmountable nation. We are invincible. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to heroes. Thank you and goodbye.